This movie is based on a true story. A girl named Nellie Brown was found wandering the streets of New York. She looked disoriented and couldn't remember anything about herself. The police circulated her photo hoping that her relatives would show up, but none of the people looking for their missing loved ones recognized Nellie Brown. Dr. Ingram is convinced that a patient with amnesia could pose a danger to society and must be isolated. Nellie felt that she had a home somewhere, but where exactly was unknown. Dr. Josiah, the new psychotherapist, was eager to help the girl, but Dr. Ingram's word was decisive. Nellie insists she must return to New York, but she's not allowed to leave Blackwell Island until her memory returns. In the psychiatric institution on the island, patients are cut off from the outside world. Nurse Grady is the most senior among the junior medical staff here. Dr. Josiah asked her to loosen Nellie's shoes, which were too tight right now, because all the keys are with the head nurse. Grady said it was a bad idea because there are 45 patients here, and the restraints on the shoes help maintain discipline. However, Dr. Josiah insisted, and taking the keys from the nurse, did it himself. Nurse Lila reported that new patients are ready for bathing procedures. Lottie, like other women, was very frightened. Nurse group behaved extremely rudely and chose Lottie first for the bathing procedures. Lottie screamed that her family would take her away soon and that she had to feed her baby, but of course the staff didn't care. Nellie tried to stand up for Lottie but was powerless to do anything. After the bathing procedures, the patients were led to breakfast. Lottie cried, remembering her baby. The rocking chair in the corridor reminds her of the child. Nellie reassured the girl, saying that if they don't go to the dining room right now, it will be worse. Before breakfast the patients, repeating after Nurse Grady, recited a prayer. After that, Grady announced that the annual ball organized by the charity committee would take place soon. The junior medical staff joked that this pseudo-ball would resemble more of madness, but there is an opinion that such things positively affect the patient's recovery. If the staff's breakfast was hearty and appetizing, the patients were served with gray disgusting porridge. Each woman here has her own sad story. Lottie is the daughter of the American Revolution and comes from one of the respected families in New York. When Lottie was sent here, she thought it was something like a sanatorium. Nellie is here because of her amnesia. She knows nothing about her past. Some women will likely spend their lives here because they have nowhere else to go. Realizing the true situation, Lottie was horrified. But she believes that when her husband or brother finds out she's here, they will come for her. As Lottie Hollister comes from high society, she doesn't belong here. Nellie is sure she has heard the Hollister name before. Before bedtime, the patient's shoes were tightened. Nellie shouted that it was too tight, so nurse group threatened to lock her in the isolation ward, where Dr. Josiah would never find her. Lottie cried all night, and Nellie comforted her. Lottie is very grateful to her new friend for the support and plans to lie to the doctors, saying that Nellie is her cousin. In that case, when Lottie's brother comes, Nellie can leave with them. The next morning, Nellie expressed her outrage to Dr. Josiah about the cruel treatment from the junior medical staff. Nellie is convinced that this place has driven many women insane. Dr. Josiah considered the patient's words unfounded. He is sure that Nellie's amnesia is related to some trauma in the past, and only proper treatment can restore her memory. When Nellie mentioned remembering the Hollister surname, the doctor decided it wasn't a recollection because Hollister is a well-known name in New York. Every time Nellie tries to delve into her past, something stops her. She can't think properly in this place and in these shoes. Using his own keys, Dr. Josiah loosened the patient's shoes again. He promised to do this every day, but it would be better if it remained their secret. Nellie and Dr. Josiah became very close. Dr. Josiah has a wife and daughter, although he dreamed of having a son. Nellie has a request for the doctor, to allow Lottie to sit on the rocking chair in the corridor. The thing is, this chair reminds Lottie of her child, but Nurse Grady prohibits patients from using the furniture. Dr. Josiah granted the request, but when other patients saw Lottie sitting on the chair, they also wanted to, and it caused a commotion. Nurse Lila tried to intervene, but the doctor assured her that the patients were under his supervision. Taking advantage of the commotion, Nellie ran away somewhere. Lila warned Grady. The nurses didn't know that Nellie was following them. Making sure they had left, Nellie began rummaging through Grady's things. By this point, the situation was already out of control. The nurses appeared, and Grady called all the patients to silence, telling Dr. Josiah that the chair was prohibited because patients were fighting over it. By the senior nurse's order, the junior medical staff led the women outside for occupational therapy, although many resisted. Josiah and Grady didn't exchange a word. Left alone, the nurse sat in the rocking chair and smiled. Meanwhile, Nellie found a leather folder belonging to her. The diary contains entries about terrible things happening in this place. Nellie heard footsteps too late, but Nurse Fenton didn't get angry. Nellie is famous now. Her photo is in all the newspapers. Fenton agreed to hide Nellie's personal belongings. Footsteps were heard. Fenton and Nellie hastily cleaned up the mess, and Nellie hid behind the curtain. When Grady appeared, Fenton said that someone from the charity organization was waiting downstairs to discuss the upcoming ball. Fortunately, Grady didn't notice anything. Later, the patients were dragging stones back and forth in buckets. Then Nellie, who managed to steal Lottie's son's blanket, secretly handed it to the girl. This will help her stay connected with her child. Nellie showed her diary to Dr. Josiah. In her opinion, the fact that nurses confiscate all patients' personal belongings is wrong. The diary contained entries about the horrors happening at Blackwell. The thing is, Nellie doesn't remember writing it at all. However, Dr. Josiah didn't see it as a problem. He doesn't want to talk to Nurse Grady about it, otherwise she'll find out that Nellie broke into her office. According to Josiah, despite Grady's tough approach, she only wants the best for the patients. But he allowed Nellie to take her diary from his office anytime. Before bedtime, Nurse Grady told all the patients that from now on, none of them would approach the chair. Contrary to the agreement, Lottie took her son's blanket not at night. Grady demanded Lottie to explain where she got the blanket from. The girl lied that she didn't remember, but Grady wasn't convinced. When Nurse Group was about to take Lottie to the isolation ward, Nellie confessed that she stole the blanket from Grady's office. As punishment, Grady was going to destroy the blanket. The nurse also accused Nellie of having an attraction to Dr. Josiah, who by the way is married. By Grady's order, orderlies restrained Nellie's hands and took her to a room where the patient was subjected to traditional, very inhumane methods of treatment. The other women heard the screams. When it was all over, Grady told Nellie that suffering brings healing. Grady's childhood was very difficult. She became an orphan at an early age and was sent to the Magdalene Asylum. It's the worst fate for any girl. Fenton led Nellie back to the common ward. Fenton doesn't think Grady's actions were right. Looking out the window at the lights of New York, Nellie thinks about something of her own. Fenton finds it unfair that there's more money in New York than anywhere else, while most people have nothing. Dr. Josiah shows an interest in Nellie, but she clearly wasn't in the mood for conversation. In reality, Nellie is afraid that the nurses will again accuse her of improper things. Right now Nellie just wants to follow the rules. Memories haunt her. Not only the patients here are in captivity, but also the medical staff. Many of them are forced to live on the island away from their families. Nurse Fenton is sometimes visited by her brother, a fisherman who owns a boat. Water is the only way off the island. Traditionally before breakfast, the patients recited a prayer, repeating the words after Grady. It seems Lottie really started to lose her mind and refused to eat, rocking back and forth in place. Nellie tried to calm Lottie down, but she continued to behave irrationally. Nellie urged the other patients to rock as well because the staff wouldn't be able to place everyone in isolation at once. The nurses' attempts to calm the patients down were futile. Later, Grady announced that there was a lice epidemic here, which explained the hysteria of the patients in the dining hall. Of course there were no lice at all, it was just a form of punishment. Grady was going to shave all the women's heads. Nellie, who proved herself as a true leader, was supposed to be the first. Dr. Josiah intervened and stopped this outrage. The doctor believes that if the patients lose their remaining femininity, it will harm their treatment. That's why Josiah ordered kerosene to be used for lice treatment. So the nurses did. Because of the smell of kerosene the patients coughed. They shouldn't approach the lamps now, otherwise their hair could catch fire at any moment. Suddenly, Lottie burst into insane laughter and then snatched Grady's smoking pipe. The nurse tried to persuade Lottie to return the pipe, promising her the blanket in return. However, instead of that, Lottie put the pipe to her own hair. Nellie screamed and was about to rush to Lottie's aid, but Grady stopped her. Lottie had no chance of survival. At night, there was a modest funeral. The patients grieved deeply for Lottie. Grady, who never destroyed the blanket, placed it in the trunk with the rest of the patients' belongings. Josiah and Nellie were walking in the forest near the clinic. Josiah realized he had been wrong to allow himself to overstep boundaries with Nellie. Later, Nellie approached Fenton and begged for help to escape from here. If Fenton's brother could take Nellie off the island on his boat, she would find a way to thank them. The conversation was interrupted by Nurse Group, who rudely ordered Fenton back to work. Josiah received a telegram from New York about Nellie Brown. Preparations for the ball in the asylum are in full swing. Also, a certain Mr. Batts Driscoll from Harvard University arrived on the island. He's here because he read about the mysterious girl Nellie Brown in the newspaper and noted a striking resemblance to another girl, Nellie Bly. Batts loves Nellie very much and is searching for her everywhere. Nellie had a tough childhood, but she managed to escape poverty and achieve success. Now she strives to help people. Out of jealousy, Josiah lied that yesterday Nellie Brown's family took her away from here. Before leaving, Batts mentioned that Nellie Bly is a writer and reporter. Of course Nellie was still here. Seeing Batts through the window, Nellie rushed towards him calling his name. Unfortunately Batts didn't hear Nellie, the gates closed behind him. The medical staff grabbed Nellie. Later, she told Dr. Josiah that she remembered the man she saw through the window. There was a sincere attachment between them. But the doctor said that the man supposedly came to visit him because their mutual friend got into trouble. Nellie knew for sure that Josiah was lying. He began to suggest to the patient that she had paranoia and that she was trying to project her feelings towards him onto other men. When Josiah advised Nellie to focus on the positive things happening to her in the present, she said there was nothing positive in this place. The medical staff is getting ready for today's ball. Grady handed Lottie Hollister's dress to the nurse so someone could represent her at the ball. It was time for the ball. Josiah invited Nellie to dance. She tried to refuse, but the doctor was too insistent. The nurses watched them closely as they danced. They were interrupted by Fenton, who informed the doctor that Nurse Grady wanted to see him. Seizing the moment, Fenton whispered to Nellie that her brother was already waiting for them. Group blocked their path, and Fenton lied that she was taking the patient to the bathroom. Grady was surprised when Josiah approached her and asked why she wanted to see him. Meanwhile, the nurse and the patient escaped. Fenton had no intention of returning to this island either. However, they were too late. Fenton's brother had already sailed away. To save her own skin, Fenton called out to the others, pretending she had caught the runaway patient. Nellie burst into tears. She was brought to Dr. Josiah in a straitjacket. Grady accused the doctor of behaving inappropriately towards Nellie, thus forcing her to run away. Grady also made it clear to the doctor that she knew about his dismissal from the prestigious London institution for showing a special interest in one of the patients. Nellie screamed that the man who had arrived earlier was looking for her. However, Josiah continued to deny it. Grady wants Josiah to hand over responsibility for Nellie's treatment to her, otherwise the nurse threatened to turn him in. Nellie is a reporter who dreamed of writing about something more significant than what women usually write about. Without Bat's knowledge, Nellie was going to go to Blackwell, where women without a voice are held. That evening, Bats received a letter sent retroactively, in which Nellie confessed that she was on a secret mission in Blackwell at the publisher's request. Bats immediately went to the publishing house. Since Bats has influential connections, the head of the publishing house provided him with information. Nellie had indeed been feigning amnesia all this time just to get in here. Now Nurse Grady is subjecting the patient to inhumane treatment methods, forcing her to reveal the truth about herself. Nellie had prepared extensively for her journalistic investigation, but she can't take it anymore. Grady still believes she's doing a noble deed. Without treatment, all these patients would have long perished. Through suffering, they find healing. Bats arrived at Blackwell and demanded to bring Nellie Bly right away. This time Josiah's lies won't work. Grady can't allow Nellie to publish her article. If everyone finds out what's happening here, the institution will be shut down. Fortunately, Bats arrived in time and stopped this madness. Later, Nellie bid farewell to all the patients, promising to remember each one of them. Nellie holds no grudge against Fenton, understanding she meant no harm. Through Nurse Group, Dr. Josiah handed Nellie her belongings, including Lottie's blanket. Nellie truly feels sorry for Grady, who had a difficult childhood. But that doesn't justify her actions. Nellie spent only 10 days here, but it felt like eternity. She left the island with Bats. Soon Grady and Josiah saw police officers through the window. It was over for them. Nellie's article was a resounding success. Now she's famous. Next we see photos of the real heroes of this story. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel not to miss more exciting new products. Also, the authors will be pleased if you leave your opinion in the comments.